Today I will be giving all the Unova Legendaries a Paradox form. I think that most of them are pretty cool, but the last one is absolutely insane. For our first piece we're going to take care of Legendaries. We decided to make all the forces of nature into a past form, and since each of them already has an animalistic form, we're definitely going to use those Therian forms. The first change we made was to give him a patch of body armor and replace his clouds with fire. My idea for this Pokemon was that he would have a source of fuel in his body that would always keep the fire lighted, sort of what Charmander has as well. This instantly made me think of trees that have flammable sap in them, so that's why I changed his head feature into a tree trunk. This also helped me build out the nature side of Paradox Pokemon. I already liked the change I made up until that point, but they wouldn't be enough to sell this as a standalone piece. This is why I made sure to give him a way larger beard and extruded a lot of the rocky elements he had on his design. The colors were basically the same as the original piece, but now he added 3 colors for his headpiece and of course the fire all around his body. Legendaries, the Formula 1, the Paradox Pokemon. This Pokemon is said to appear near wildfires, easily controlling them to save other Pokemon. It does seem that it isn't fond of humans, since saving houses and people isn't on his agenda. It has even been seen attacking people with fire, so it's best to stay clear of this Pokemon. I really like the idea of bringing in the natural typing elements into this trio. It fits them being one with nature, and that's what this trio is all about. The second transformation of today is for Thunderous. We now had a few design elements we could replicate from the first piece we made, like the bigger facial hair, replacing his cloud with elemental features, and we gave him a piece of body armor. The element for this Pokemon would be water, since I thought that fit his original typing quite well. I did replace a lot of his electrical shapes into more bubbly ones, but I didn't want him to lose the electric type look. To solve this issue, I made his horn look like an electric bolt, which brought back the wanted typing. After adding some droplets to the bottom of the tail and making sure his rocky elements were extruded from his body, it was time to put in the colors. It was quite fun to render out water, since I've never done that before. I am not really sure if it doesn't just look like weirdly shaped fire, but I do like the end result. Bubbly Storm, the Paradox Pokemon. This Pokemon is able to materialize out of nowhere and will pulverize its foes into nothingness with showers of devastatingly powerful electric water orbs. It thrives in thunderstorms and appears to gather power in them as well. I really love this design. It is a simple redesign, but the watery element really adds something to the character. To me, it finally feels like a force of nature. The third Pokemon for today is my least favorite of the 3, Tornadus. I will admit that even though I did do my best for this piece, I just wasn't able to bring it together. I'm not sure if that happened because I genuinely don't care about this Pokemon, or if I just suck at tweaking birds. Probably a little bit of both. We started out by bringing out his facial hair again, and we decided to add the grass element to him. This made us redesign his clouds into more fine-like shapes, which we will fill in with some green energy in the end. The other changes were quite basic. We brought back the extruded rocky elements, and we made sure to give him some armor as well. For the colors we used quite dark ones, but I didn't want him to look too muddy. That's why I made sure to use a lot of highlights to turn him into a bright looking bird. Gliding Seed, the Paradox Pokemon. This Pokemon loves to rain down on Pokemon below with massive energy bombs. It is also capable of creating winds with enough power to blow any house away. Like I said, I am not a huge fan of this Pokemon, nor the drawing. I am just happy I'm done with this trio, to be honest. It is now time for the Swords of Justice trio, and the first target will be Cobalion. I didn't really have a plan for this design, but I just started adding details which I saw fit for him. Some of these details were the thicker legs, the added fur, and the hooves on his feet. Once I put in these details, I did actually get a path to follow. I now saw this creature as a mountain-dwelling, thick-coated beast. In order to make him able to withstand the harsh world I wanted him to live in, I decided to give him bigger horns and to add tusks onto his face as well. I also made the spikes on his shoulder a lot sharper and spikier to make him seem even rougher. The last detail I changed was to make his tail into icy spikes instead of an actual tail. This would allow me to bring in the ice typing even better. The colors of the original design fitted in perfectly, but I did give him a unique shiny as how I would see this creature to look like without the Paradox color rules. Wrathful Yak, the Paradox Pokemon. This Pokemon has a thick layer of fat under his skin, which makes him durable against incredibly low temperatures. It will fight to protect any small Pokemon, and just its presence alone will calm any vicious foe. I am really happy how this piece turned out, but the animation is kinda meh. I've tried to give my new animations a bit more subtlety instead of making them go crazy. I wasn't really able to animate much with this pose since it was already quite energetic. I created a brush set with all my favorite brushes. I use each of them with every drawing that I make, so if you want to draw in the same style as me, I recommend checking out my website. For only €5.99, you can get the Procreate brush set, which you will be able to use in Procreate. It includes an amazing line art brush, a highlight brush which instantly makes your pieces look a lot better, and many other fantastic brushes. I also want to have a written down version of how to create Paradox Pokemon. That's why I created this step-by-step guide. It's easy to follow, and I added a bunch more tips you can use while drawing. You will also get the work files of the 2 Paradox Pokemon we created, and I added 2 work files with just a line art so you can practice coloring and shading. This guide is also available for €5.99 on my website, but since I thought you guys might be interested in buying it together with the brush set, I made it into a combi deal for only €8.99 for the both of them. That is a 25% discount, so I know what I would do. It is now time for Terrakion. You might be wondering if I will make this into a pass form as well, but I won't. The reason why I made Combellion into a pass form and will do the same thing for Virizion is because we already have their legit future forms, Iron Crown and Iron Leaves. This drawing will be more or less a prediction of what we'll get for the real deal. That's why I tried my best to look at the pieces of the real Paradox Pokemon, and I tried to use a lot of the elements they use for those designs as well. A few of those elements are the rounded off shape on his back leg, the open lines for the rubber patch, and the segmentation of all his limbs in general. This is one of those designs that doesn't have to change much, but looks so good with all the small robotic references. I'm especially in love with all the segment lines I put down all around his body. These really added a ton to the design once I got to the highlighting part. We did have to do a dark robot again for the shiny, because his regular body would already be grey, and our goal is to not make a single bad shiny in our entire career. Iron Bull, the Paradox Pokemon. This Pokemon is known to be short-tempered and loses control quite easily. It generates fire through his entire body to propel his body forwards, leaving a burning crater at his landing spot. It has even been seen smashing entire holes into mountains with its incredible ramming power. Sounds like me for real. Hey yo, what did he just say? I don't think this will be what we'll get in a few months by Pokemon, since I do struggle to add robotic elements into the design. Most robotic elements require a good understanding of 3D shape manipulation, and guess what? I don't have that yet. Hopefully at least some of the design will be visible on the real one. Up next is the final part of this trio, Virizion. I was actually quite excited to work on this piece. Green is my favorite color and it works very well with my highlighting brush, so I was hyped to get through that part for the entire drawing. The first thing I added was a few more flower petals on his neck to make him look a bit more intimidating. The next thing I did was to make the pink parts on his legs sturdier and added sharp hooves to the tip of the legs. After that, someone in my chat suggested to add a tail to the design, and that actually worked out quite nicely. I did have to make sure to sketch some shading onto it in order to see if it would look nice, but in the end we did make it work. After we were done with the tail, we added in some punky hair and tiny teeth for the feral aesthetic. It was then to move on to his head shape. We added 2 petals to the tips, one on each side. We also made his head shape a bit spikier and added a spiky texture to the edges. The last 2 things we added were some scales on the big empty parts of his body and gave him some flower petals on his shoulders. The colors worked out beautifully for his new typing, combining the green of grass and the pink of fairy types. Forest Guardian, the Paradox Pokemon. This Pokemon is known to be a protector of the forest, hunting down anything or anyone that tries to harm the forest or the creatures in there. Its hunting capabilities are massive, but its healing power is even stronger. The Pokemon of the forest know to visit this Pokemon in order to get healed up back to full health. I actually really love this piece. It blends fierce elements perfectly with graceful ones. I could really see Ash encounter one where he would have to win over his trust and save the forest together. We have once again reached the point of the box Legendaries. Our first one will be a future form of Reshiram. You might be wondering why I decided to make this into a future form instead of Zekrom. My idea was that Zekrom already looks quite futuristic, which would make his transformation a bit boring. This is why I decided on a past form for Zekrom and a future form for this one. I wanted them to be different in order to combine the 2 different forms for the Kyurem piece, just like we did for Eevee. We started out by adding a bunch of segments on parts like his back, the neck and his wings. After that, we made sure to make all of his fur into blocky shapes instead of pointy ones. I must admit that I struggled quite hard with this piece and it was difficult to add a lot of different elements to it. In the end I just added a black body patch to his belly and finished it up with an orange color for the lighted parts. Iron White, the Paradox Pokemon. This Pokemon spews fire from its tail onto those who become consumed by greed. It fights those who it does not see as worthy of life and will seek out anyone who doesn't share its truths. I really like the highlights on the lighter parts of this piece and I love the combination of the white and dark colors of this beast. Let's now get started on the other box legendary, Zekrom. The first thought I had for this piece was to implement rocky elements onto the design. I felt like doing it in an armor style and I decided to make his features a bit more muscular in general. We also added some obsidian rocks on his shoulder and gave him a big horn on his nose. After that we basically added a ton of feathers on, for example, his fingers and neck. We then added a bigger and jagged jaw and we gave him some rocks on the tip of his wings as well. The last significant change we made was to make his tail a lot more slender, which gives our Pokemon a more agile aesthetic. Once we got to the colors, I played around with different shades of the colors for the rocks, but a simple grayed out brown works perfectly. After we were done with that, we added in the shadows and finished it up with some very pretty highlights. Feathered Rock, the Paradox Pokemon. This Pokemon can use its tail as a drill to carve out rocks to throw at its enemies at astonishing speeds. It stands for righteousness and will do anything in order to achieve greatness. If a Pokemon loses the righteousness in its heart, this Pokemon will hunt them down and eat them. I am really happy with the end result of this dude. I wanted to do something different for the shiny though, so I went with the Reshiram colors for this one. Well, it is now time for the final legendary of Unova, Kyurem. I got a ton of requests to use the original dragon forms, so my idea was to bring all of the 3 designs together into one epic beast. We started out with the black original dragon and added on the white wing feathers of the white one. We then proceeded to change all the black parts to fit the design of Feathered Rock, changing his wings into a feathered one, added some spikes to his neck, and giving him some rocks on certain parts of his body. We then had to mirror the design with all the future elements of Iron White and the future form of Kyurem. We added some segment lines, parts for the lighted area, used the same setup for his wings as the other one, gave him a belly patch, and made room for an eye socket where the screen would fit. The color palette used only the colors of Feathered Rock and Kyurem, but the lighter parts got the orange from Iron White. This made us able to go for a really cool typing, which isn't used too often. Metamorphosis, the Paradox Pokemon. This Pokemon is the embodiment of truth and ideals. It strives to protect and create the best world for Pokemon and people to coexist, but it will destroy anything or anyone that tries to stop him. It has the ability Proto Drive, which doubles the Pokemon's most proficient stat for one turn if it is holding a booster energy, and it drops to a 50% boost after that turn. This thing looks freaking epic. I really love the multiple elements that are combined into one big piece. This might be my favorite design I've made so far, and I'm not even kidding. Well friends, these were all the Unova Legendaries. Next week we'll take a look at Kalos, and goodbye.